If you've ever felt deep down that the system treats human life like a number, like an entry, like a unit of value, you're not crazy. You're noticing what most people are trained not to see. Today's question is simple, but it cuts straight through the fog. Is legal state birth registration a lottery? Now, let me be fair right up front. No statute in Ontario or Canada calls the birth registration a lottery. Under Canadian law, a lottery is tied to gaming, consideration, chance, and prize. That's the classic framework. So I'm not claiming the government runs a lottery in the criminal code sense, but here's what I am saying plainly. When you look at the economic structure, the actuarial mathematics, and the lifetime forecasting model, birth registration functions like a pooled wagering system, not in name, but in architecture. And the difference between name and reality is where the truth begins to expose the fiction. Let's walk through it using the simplest lens. What does a lottery do? A lottery does a few basic things. One, it creates an entry, what people call a ticket. Two, it pulls participants into a managed system. Three, it forecasts outcomes statistically. Four, it benefits the house regardless of individual outcomes. Five, it distributes payouts based on the system's rules. Now look at birth registration through that same structural lens. One, ticket creation. The birth certificate becomes the system's identity ticket. Not your soul, not your conscience, but your state recognized instrument, your file, your number, and your registered persona. Two, entry into a pool. Once registered, you are counted. And what is counted can be forecast. What is forecast can be securitized. What is securitized can be administered as projected value. That is not a conspiracy. That is how actuarial governance works. Three, the pool runs on actuarial forecasting. Governments forecast populations like insurers forecast risk. This includes future labor participation, taxable income potential, consumption patterns, healthcare cost curves, mortality timelines, pension obligations, unemployment risk, and disability benefit exposure. In other words, population becomes a pooled stream of projected revenue and projected liability. And when you combine that with pension systems, public insurance systems, and sovereign debt planning, what you're looking at is the same mathematical world as a pari-mutuel pool. Horse racing is pari-mutuel, insurance pools are pari-mutuel, unemployment pools, public medical pools, and pension solvency pools, different vocabulary, but the same mechanics. The many carry the forecast of the few, and the system survives by statistical averaging. Four, the house benefits regardless. In a casino, the house wins on average. In a pooled actuarial state model, the system also benefits across the life cycle. High earners are taxed, low earners are still taxed through consumption, fees, and participation. The unemployed are regulated, tracked, and conditioned. The imprisoned are still processed within a funded pipeline. And the retired are shifted into benefit systems that were designed long before you consented. No matter what happens to the individual, the state's administrative machine continues to draw value from the registered life. That is why I call it lottery-like, because the system is built to extract benefit across uncertain individual outcomes using pooled forecasting. The one main difference with the birth registration lottery system is that the participant never consented. This is the part that matters morally, spiritually, and legally. A newborn does not consent. A baby does not contract. A child does not choose to be entered. And yet, the system is built so that the child is registered first and asked questions later. So if someone says, well, you agreed to it, my response is simple. No, the child did not agree. The child was recorded. Now let's shift to scripture because scripture speaks directly to something that many people are uneducated about, the lot. Proverbs 18:18 says, "The lot causeth contentions to cease and parteth between the mighty." In his biblical commentary, Matthew Henry points out that lots were used when disputes were too great, when mighty parties wouldn't compromise, when arguments would be endless, when honor and obligation were contested. A lot is an assignment mechanism. It is not merely gambling, not merely randomness. It's an allocation of duty. And here's the punchline: the party who casts the lot bears responsibility for what the lot produces. Now, consider modern birth registration as a kind of lot casting. The state creates the registration, the state assigns the identifier and number, the state issues the certificate, the state categorizes the person administratively, the state distributes burdens and benefits through its own process. The state gains by counting the person within its actuarial forecast. So who cast the lot? The state did. And if Proverbs 18:18 is understood, then the lot ends contention by assigning duty impartially. Meaning, if the state created the registered legal identity, then the state must carry the administrative responsibility for what it created. The Fictionary dictionary entry for lot summarizes this concept. A lot is an assignment of duty that ends contention by putting responsibility where it belongs. This is analogous to modern birth registration, where a numbered legal identity is issued without the child's consent, and burdens and benefits are distributed through that registry system. This is where conscience comes in. I'm not telling you to deny reality. I'm not telling you to pretend the registry doesn't exist. I'm saying something far more surgical and far more biblical. Return the burden to the caster, because a disciple of Christ cannot serve two masters. And Matthew 22:21 tells us to render to Caesar what is Caesar's. If the state created the legal person instrument, if the state owns the certificate framework, if the state benefits from population forecasting, then the state should administer its own creation. That is not rebellion. That is not OPCA. That is conscience. That is saying, I will not be surety for what I did not create. I will not be compelled to perform as an artificial identity. I return the administrative lot to its issuer. This is exactly what you'd call, in constitutional terms, a charter conscience accommodation, especially under freedom of conscience and religion. And spiritually, it aligns with Christ. Adam took on liability that was not his own. Christ cancels that debt. So if birth registration is a modern replay of imposed suretyship, then election out of surety is an act of spiritual alignment, an act of truth. So is birth registration a lottery? Not by statute, but by structure. Economically and actuarially, it resembles a pooled wagering system. And biblically, it resembles a lot casting, an assignment of identity and duty by an authority, which leads to the core conclusion. The state cast the lot, the state created the entity, then the state must administer the entity, and the disciple of Christ may, in clean conscience, return what was never his to carry. For deeper essays, full audio readings, and the complete Fictionary dictionary, join us on Patreon. The link is in the description. Peace be with you.